Today, it sort of seems like everybody's a wholesaler. What if there was a way for you to do one deal? Literally, just one deal. That's all you got to do. One deal. And you would make more than 98% of all the wholesalers running around there, chasing their tail, doing deals. And all you did is one.
Wholesaling is no longer the best kept secret in real estate.
What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Naugle, and welcome back to the show. Let me paint you a picture. In today's world of real estate, there's wholesalers, more wholesalers, and more wholesalers. Why? Because they've been pitched that it's easy. They can go out there and get a deal with very limited knowledge, with no money out of their pocket sometimes, and they can make 5, 10 grand. And that's been the thing that's been going on for as long as I've been in real estate, since 2014. But today, it sort of seems like everybody's a wholesaler. What if there was a way for you to do one deal? Literally, just one deal. That's all you got to do. One deal. And you would make more than 98% of all the wholesalers running around there, chasing their tail, doing deals. And all you did is one. That's what the guy I'm bringing on does. Trent Ellingford, we've known each other for a while. Dude, I don't even know how long it's been now. To be honest, I flew out to Arizona. You guys took me to lunch and we hung out for a few days, and I learned about your operations. We started doing some work together. What year was that?
That's a great question, man. I don't know. It's been a while. That's probably at least 5 years ago, right?
Had to have been. It was definitely been a while, but we built a relationship then, and that relationship never ended. And I remember I was out in Cody Sperber's place, and you were speaking, and I was doing a podcast with him. And I just kind of out of the corner of my ear just heard you talking about this thing that you're doing today, which I didn't know a lot about until we talked offline. And it's fascinating because I just think, when everybody rushes to one thing, it creates an awful lot of competition. And what you did is you saw this and you said, you know what? I'm going to go where nobody else is, or at least not a lot of people are. So let's 100%. Start there. This is fascinating.
Yeah. And to your point, I call it a blind spot in the market, right? Is identifying the opportunity where there aren't a whole lot of people. And so if I can just back up a little bit, just to kind of set the table with this, this, but your viewers probably don't. I've been involved in real estate for over 20 years now. Started on the residential side. I wasn't a wholesaler, never considered myself a wholesaler. I had rental properties, okay, as a buy and hold guy. Fast forward when COVID hit, I didn't know what was going to happen. And I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. I thought home prices were going to go down. I really did. But what we saw was residential home prices, supply, demand, right? Prices skyrocketed for several years. Multifamily, same thing. But other asset classes took a really hard hit. Office, everybody started working from home. And for your viewers that maybe aren't super familiar with commercial real estate, and it's really quite simple, honestly, once you understand it. It's just all numbers based, but values based off of income, right? It's based off of revenue, your net operating income, and then the cap rate determines the value of the property. Well, all of a sudden you have office vacancies that doesn't have that income, so values drop tremendously. Another super hard hit asset class when COVID hit was hotels. Right? Everybody stopped traveling. Hotels were bleeding money literally for a couple of years. And so recognized a unique opportunity there because nobody was buying office and nobody was buying hotels, hospitality. Banks wouldn't even lend on hospitality, like wouldn't touch it. So whenever you see something like that, there's an opportunity. And through a partner, there's John, John, mm-hmm. We tied up a 40,000 square foot office space. This thing was probably 20% occupancy, okay, just bleeding money. And we tied that up for $1.6 million. Now, just to quickly put that into perspective, right next to it was a large apartment complex that was in escrow at the exact same time for over $8 million.
Wow.
So the apartment complex is $8 million. We have the office space for 1.4. Ended up wholesaling that just selling the paper, right? Selling the contract to a multifamily developer that was going to convert that into apartment complexes or into an apartment complex, for $2 million. So you can do the math on that. We held the paper for 1.6. We sold it for 2. And for me, that was just a big light bulb when I'm like, there's an opportunity here that, and to your point, making more off of one deal than most wholesalers make in an entire year off of all their deals.
Trent, let me say something and this is something I heard you say earlier. Wholesalers, a lot of times there's 2 wholesalers on one deal. And let's just say they wholesale the deal for 10 grand, by some, people that's a decent living, but you're splitting a grape. So imagine you got all your friends over and you got one grape. And now you need to cut that grape into a lot of different slices, and so that everybody gets a little bit of the food and the taste of that grape. We're playing with watermelons here, folks. We're not splitting grapes in this one. This is a watermelon.
Absolutely.
Everybody's full when they're done.
Everybody eats well. There's enough.
I love that.
Really, really well. And so my focus shifted and I just went 100% into that. And it's not always changing the use of an asset, although there's huge opportunity there. But back to, you mentioned that everybody wholesale. It seems like that's what everybody does. Wholesaling is no longer the best kept secret in real estate. It still is a great way to generate cash relatively quickly. But if you look at the residential world of wholesaling, it's hours and hours on the phone, cold calling, or you're spending a bunch of money on direct mail and advertising, or SEO, PPC, whatever it may be. And it is extremely time consuming. To use an analogy, everybody's fishing in the same pond, fighting over tiny little fish. And I'm clear over here fishing by myself in a pond with huge fish. And guess what? They're all biting. There's so much money in the commercial real estate space right now that needs to be placed. I'm talking about institutional money. Some of my buyers are large institutions. Sometimes it's just somebody that's got a big 1031 and they got to place that money. Or I work with a couple groups that let me back up. The one thing that all of my buyers right now say in the commercial space, even with inflation, the recessions upon us, doom, gloom, whatever, the number one thing I hear, Trent, I need more deal flow. We have capital. We need to place it somewhere. We need more deal flow. I walked a hotel yesterday with a buyer, 104 units here in Phoenix, looking to convert it to multifamily. And so when you tie and put together a deal like that, I mentioned this to you offline. I don't even look at a deal unless it's got a 6-figure spread. So I want your viewers to think about that for a minute. I don't even look at it unless it's a 6-figure spread. Some of these actually have 7 figures. And so to your point, even if you're carving that up a little bit, it really doesn't matter. And so the competition, I think, in the residential space, it's pretty intense. Everybody's fighting over those tiny little deals with tiny little profits. And then when it goes into escrow and you go to sign the paper, if there's maybe a lien that you weren't aware of or a second mortgage or whatever it may be, that could wipe the deal out, wipe the profit out. And with commercial, it's not only less competition, there's just less emotion. I'm not dealing with a homeowner that's lived in that house for 20 years and is in a tough spot and now needs it's not that way. It's pretty black and white, but large groups, they're not on the ground finding these deals. They're typically working with a broker to feed them deals. So if I know how to find a great deal based off the numbers, I know how to tie it up, how to analyze it and tie it up, and I have a buyer on the end, how many deals a year do you have to do for this to really make sense? And because I think most people get into real estate because they want control, right? Control of time, freedom. Well, to do that, you have to have income. And I feel with traditional wholesaling residential, you're always chasing. I'm not spending more time. In fact, I'd honestly say I'm spending less time than most residential wholesalers doing this. And I get to, it just allows me to do what I want to do. It's fun.
an interesting thing, I speak at a lot of masterminds. I'm not in the real estate game anymore. Well, I am, but I'm playing a different game. I'm just not wholesaling. I'm barely flipping unless it's my wife just doing something just to keep herself busy. So, I'm more in the being the bank game. I think that's my space. But here's the thing. When I speak at these events, everybody before, I'm making this and I'm doing this and I bought this Lambo. These last couple that I've been at has been a different tone. And listen, we're only talking about a 6-month time frame where this has gone from like, everything's perfect to whoa. And the reason is folks, like, whether or not this or not, I hate to let you know bad news, but we're in a recession. Technically in a recession, I will tell you, we are in, don't listen to those assholes over there in DC. We are in a recession. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. And because we're in a recession, things are changing. It's kind of like Bob Dylan's song, the times are a changing. And that is absolutely the case. And because the times are changing, your business model needs to evolve. Your business model needs to change. You don't want to be going out there chasing scraps. And here's the other thing. Who are most of these wholesalers selling to? In most markets, the wholesalers are selling to institutions, the BlackRocks, the Blackstones, the big hedge funds. You know what those hedge funds are going to eventually do? They're going to learn how to do what those wholesalers do. It's already happening. But you know what? They're not going to learn how to do what Trent is doing. They're not going to switch and pivot to learn how to find these bigger apartment complexes because it's a different game. And the other thing that's really important to understand is as things start to materialize, the Fed keeps raising interest rates. The Fed's going to start sucking money and liquidity back out of the markets, which is going to perpetuate this recession. What is going to happen is all the people that used to be able to buy houses no longer can buy houses. You're seeing it right now. Home ownership in the future, and it saddens me to say this, is not going to be what the home ownership world that we grew up in is, because hedge funds are going to own the houses. You aren't. Your neighbors aren't going to be able to afford a house. So where are they going to go? They're going to have to, everybody needs a place to live. They're going to have to rent. And that's why this market, this commercial space is so unbelievable. And it's the perfect time because of this pivot Trent talked about. They're on sale. Houses aren't on sale, maybe a little bit, but they're not on sale like commercial is, because commercial got smashed in the face. And once you learn what Trent knows, how to basically take a use and change it, and then you've got these big institutions that now are speaking a different language. All you got to do, folks, is learn how to play their game, speak their language, understand the numbers, and then you're playing a completely different game.
Yeah. Well said, man. I agree 100% with everything you just said. What's happening right now in the residential space, homeowners are getting squeezed out. They are. We've seen that happen over the last couple of years as these big institutions are scooping up homes, and they're not scooping them up to flip them and turn around and sell them, is to rent them out. Right. So and prices keep getting forced up. Income's not keeping up with that. And so it becomes more and more difficult for people to purchase. I'm a big believer in cash flow, having an asset that generates cash flow for you, whether you work or not. But to do that, you have to have some capital. And so if we take a look at, we are in a recession, 100% we are. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's my opinion. I've been wrong in the past, but that's my opinion.
You're not wrong.
So how do we capitalize on that? We can't just go into a shell. Well, we can, but that doesn't help us in any way, right? We want to take a step back, take a breath, and then try and recognize where the opportunities are. Well, if you have a bunch of liquidity, great. There are going to be opportunities. There's going to be some fire sales. There's going to be some discounts where you can pick up some assets. Not to get off, go another direction, but we're finding incredible discounts right now, still on office, because everybody's scared of office. So they're out there if you know what you're doing. But what if you don't have that liquidity? Or what if you do have the liquidity, but you just don't want to take the risk because there's so much uncertainty in the market? What if I buy it and values go down, or I can't lease it, whatever it is? That's another thing that I love about wholesaling commercial real estate. I'm not taking on the market risk, right? If I have it under contract, I have it in escrow, and market shift, I either come back and I retrade or I renegotiate that deal, or I step away from it. I'm not taking on the capital risk. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have to put up capital. I have to put up some money for EMD, which is an obstacle for some people because it's not like $500 on a residential property, right? If I'm looking at a $14 million asset, and don't let those numbers scare you, it's just a couple more digits, which means when you get the deal done, it's a couple more digits profit in your pocket as well. But what I'm trying to say is the seller isn't going to take $500 earnest money on a $14 million asset, right? You're going to have to pony up probably $100,000 to tie that property up. So what if you don't have the $100,000? Well, what do I do? And so what I've started to do is to partner with people, find it. If it makes sense, I'll partner with you. Let's get the thing tied up, and then we'll split the profits. Because to your point, we're splitting watermelons, right? So it's a huge win for them. It's a huge win for me. And I want to give you just one real quick example, like a real world example. I'm working with this kid. Well, and I don't even want to say kid. He's 35, Chris. That just tells you I'm old.
Yeah, well, we're getting old, and 35 is kind of a kid these days. You realize anyone under 38 years old has never seen or even had any impact from a recession? That lets you know how old we are. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's just, you added a little salt to the wound, but that's okay. I feel good. I feel young. So anyway, we started working together. I went through, hey, here's what you want to look for. And he sent me this deal in Florida. It was it is a self-storage facility. Okay. Had some fire damage to it. And it's awesome because it was listed, but it wasn't. It wasn't on Crexy. It wasn't on LoopNet. It wasn't on any of the places you would go to find a listed commercial property. The broker just had it on his crappy little website. So the reach was to almost nobody. It was vacant because it had a bunch of storm damage, 12 buildings. 2 of the buildings needed new roofs. And the woman who owned it was recently widowed. She's in her 80s. She was checked out. She was done. There's no way she was going to fix that up and lease it out. And so she let all the leases burn off and move out. So it was what I call a dead asset, meaning there's no income coming in on this thing. I don't think the broker knew how to evaluate it. And so when he sent it to me, he said, what do you think of this? And I went through and I said, this is a deal. I mean, this is a deal. We put in an offer for $196,000. Now this is a 200.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know. It's but I'm like, and I told him, I said, there's no way she's going to accept this, but let's see what she counters. It'll just give us a feel of how motivated she is on this. Now I have to preface this. This is a home run deal. Not every deal's like this. Okay. But I mean, a base hit is 6 figures. It's still not bad. So and let me tell you how I came up with that number. Because keep in mind, there's no income coming on this. We know it needs a bunch of work. We estimated probably about $500,000 in rehab to get this thing repositioned and then start leasing it out. The land was worth more than 196. It was worth probably 250. The dirt was, and I'm like, okay, if we can get it for less than the cost of the dirt, that's pretty good. So we put in an offer of 196, expecting a counter offer. She accepted our offer.
Wait, she accepted 196?
196.
Do you still have this deal?
Yeah. So here, the plan was to wholesale it. People love self-storage right now. A lot of investors, very recession proof or recession resistant, good income, but you're not dealing with the tenants, the leaky faucets, the sinks, the toilets, all that stuff. It's a great asset class. So I got 2 separate broker opinions on it without us doing anything to it. They said they would list it as it was for somewhere between 1.2 to 1.5.
With the burned units and the roofs? Like Correct. As it was? As
it was. With an expectation that it would probably sell for around 1.2. Now, we picked it up for 196. But what we ended up doing with that one, and this is getting a little off track of wholesaling, but there's always more opportunity. As we backed into the numbers, the stabilized value of that property, once it was leased out and stabilized, was closer to 3.7. So if you're looking at a $200,000 purchase price, $500,000 repair, okay. So
I got to start getting you to bring me some of these deals.
So I know money's your space, and so we just pulled some private equity, carved out a little bit of equity to purchase it. So no money out of pocket, like a true no money out of pocket deal. The kid who brought it to me, our agreement was 50-50, but now we brought in an equity partner. So we're carved up in thirds, right? Brought in that money. We're raising the last of the debt right now for the rehab, but we've already started the rehab on it. And, talking about to get a little off track and creative deals. So now I'm in the deal, no money out of pocket. I actually got money up front as closing by carving out some equity, or you can call it an acquisition fee, or carving out a little bit of equity and selling it, but got cash. We'll have cash flow, a portion of the cash flow, and then on the exit, when we sell, we'll make money on the back end of that deal. So, if it makes sense to stay in it, we will sometimes. And the great thing is with this one, we have a bunch of different exits. But think about, so the guy that found this, he wasn't brand new to real estate. He's done a few residential deals, but hit it out of the park with his first commercial deal. I mean, you're talking about a property that has 7 figures spread on it. So, I mean,
crazy. Are
they all that big? No. Are they all bigger than residential? Yes. And there's just not a lot of people in the space playing it. So it just, for somebody who sees the opportunity, is willing to take a little bit of time to learn, you're crazy not to, because the opportunity right now, come on, whatever somebody's opinion is about the economy and the market and the recession, things are changing, whether you get on board or figure something out or not. And what I love is I learned this in my life, and I've had to do it a couple of times. You can reinvent yourself at any time and say, okay, here's an opportunity. I'm going to learn how to capitalize and take advantage of it. But you got to do it before the wave is moving with or without you, if that makes sense.
Well, here's the cool thing. Like, if you just heard one deal, actually, we've talked about 2 different deals here. In each of those deals, for the majority of you listening to this, that's the only deal you'd need to do. Like, literally, think about the freedom that provides you. That's the only deal you might have to do for the entire year, depending on what you are. Most of you I know would be like, no, I'd want to keep going because I'd love to do more. But just want to wrap your head around that. And here's the best part about what we're talking about. This is about to get way better, because as things deplete, as the markets go down, as the stock market starts to fall and people start losing and losing and losing, value is going to get bigger and bigger in this space for sure. How many other 70 or 80-year-olds own storage facilities or apartment facilities that have been passed down? When everything else dries up and they can't take their income and all of a sudden they start getting some vacancies or tenants that can't pay rent, do you really think they're going to be able to hang on? Well, maybe some of them, but you can come in and help them solve their problem, and you can be in the driver's seat. But it takes knowledge. Like, listen, most of you probably have a level of knowledge in real estate if you're listening to this show, but you probably don't have a level of knowledge you need for the commercial space, which is where Trent also stepped up, saw an opportunity to solve people's problems. And now I believe you've created like the entire platform to teach people how to do what you're doing. And you're one of the first ones through the gate on this.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that happened. I'm just kind of in my lane, doing my thing, and it was working well. But in that process, you speak to a lot of other investors. I run across a lot of residential real estate investors and wholesalers who come across a commercial deal. So they'll bring it to me and say, hey, Trent, here's a deal for you. And I learned very quickly, I didn't want people just sending me commercial deals that they didn't understand how to do some basic analyzing and underwriting of that deal. Because otherwise I open my emails in the morning, I have 100 properties. Hey, look at this. No, that doesn't work. But anytime I had a conversation with a wholesaler or an investor and explain just briefly what I was doing, like literally their jaw would hit the ground. And I know some of the biggest wholesalers in the space, but they'd be like, oh my God, what? How did that? And that was off of one deal. Like, oh, how do you do that? How do I get started? And so I'd give as much information as I could in a little bit in a conversation, but it was just enough to be dangerous, right? What I do, like, I'm going to be honest, it really is simple. When I break it down, it is simple, but it's not easy. If you haven't done it, you haven't been in the space, you don't know how to have that conversation. People get intimidated by cap rate and cash on cash return and equity versus debt, because the meanings are just a little bit different in commercial real estate than residential. And so they understand it enough to get excited about it, but they don't understand it enough to actually apply it and get the deal done. So after enough people asked, I finally bit the bullet and I said, okay, I'm going to put together some type of training to show people how to do this. And then life takes over and I never got around to it. So what I did is I said, all right, I'm going to bring in 2 people and I'll work with them, because it's going to force me to do that transfer of knowledge, right? I'll do weekly calls with them, and then I'm going to have to do it. And that's exactly what happened. It forced me to put it together, to lay it out in a systematic process, to take somebody from point A to point Z to do what I'm doing. And the way I structured it is the people I work with, we partner at least on the first deal. So that's the upside for me, right? That deal in Florida that I just told you about, I never would have found that deal. I taught somebody how to do what I'm doing. They found it. They brought it to me. We partnered together. Huge win for them. Huge win for me. And I'm all about a long-term relationship. We'll do more deals in the future. So yeah, to answer your question, it kind of happened very organically. It wasn't planned, but that the hotel that I walked yesterday, the buyer there had with him a young guy who was a residential wholesaler for 3 years. He told me, was killing it, young. He's like 23. Okay. But it did extremely well. He's now working for this gentleman just 100% in acquisitions. And he wants to learn the commercial piece. And he was picking my brain. I said, well, interestingly enough, if you're serious about this, I can show you how to do it. He said, I'll do whatever it takes. If anybody that's put in the work on the residential side, you're putting in the work anyway. So if you can put your same amount of energy over here and 10x what you're doing over here, or 20x or 50x or 100x, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Wow. Let me transition real quick. Folks, if you're listening to this, and this is even something that remotely gets you fired up, the thought of like the profit you could make on one deal, like what you've just heard. Like, I don't ever really bring people on the show that are selling something. We just never do. It's not my nature, but this was too good not to bring to all of you. So if this is something you want, we'll give you the info on how to do this. But let me go another step. A lot of you are still thinking, yeah, but he said I would need all this money for the earnest money deposit. I think he said $100,000. I don't have $100,000, so this doesn't work. Let me introduce you to something that you should already know about. It's called Private Money Club. It's the dating site for money. It's people that have money that want to make money, ding, 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 brought together with people like you, people that have an opportunity and you need money to make money. You see, when you create a dating site for money, like I just explained, you create a winning solution that solves a lot of people's problems. And you know what the best part is? Timing. This launches October 14th. So folks, if money is your obstacle, then you have not learned. It's never about your resources. It's about how resourceful you can be. Go to privatemoneyclub.com right now and get registered for the most epic launch you'll ever see. Something that will change the way money works forever. So go to privatemoneyclub.com and register to be part of the October 14th launch of Private Money Club. And then you now have the answer to where the money's going to come from for you to get in bed and do some of these deals with Trent. But you got to take action, folks. If you're just sitting there learning and being like, oh, that sounds cool, you're never going to do anything. Take action. And hell, if you really want to, just text PMC, stands for Private Money Club, PMC to 33777. And that will get you registered for the launch. Trent, tell them how they can take the money from Private Money Club and go out there and make 6 figures.
Absolutely. So first of all, I love it, Chris. I love what you're doing, because I think if you ask the majority of people what's stopping them from investing in real estate, the number one answer is money. I would, but if I had the money, I would. Something that you learned and you've helped other people learn, and you put this together, which I think is awesome, but it's something I learned very early on in my career as well. Money loves to make money. Money loves to make money, but not all money knows how to make money outside of what they do, right? They're a doctor, they're an attorney, they're a chiropractor, good income. How do they get their money better working for them? If you can bring them a great product and perform, they want to keep placing that money with you. So yeah, for somebody who's like serious about learning how to do this, and I do want to preface, if you have experience, great, and you're just looking to level up or maybe add another tool to your tool belt, awesome. But even if you're new to real estate, I've been asked the question, well, Trent, how much experience should I get in residential real estate before I start investing in commercial? I wish I'd started in commercial, never started in residential. Don't get me wrong. If you have that background experience, that's great. But why would you say, well, I need to put 3 years over here focusing on nickels and dimes before I do something over here? So really it comes down to commitment for me, right? I'm only one person, so I can only work with so many people. So it's about commitment. I'm serious about this. I want to go out and I want to make something happen. And so a couple ways that if somebody's serious about that, I want to have a personal conversation with you so I can see if it's a fit for me. And then you can decide if it's a fit for you. So my name's Trent Ellingford. An easy way to do that is just go to Trent Ellingford, and I'll spell that for you, TrentEllingford, TrentEllingford.com, and just schedule a call. Go to my calendar and you can schedule a call with me. Or you could go to Instagram. It's Trent_Ellingford. Again, TRENT_ELLINGFORD, and shoot me a DM and we can schedule a call. I am accessible. Look, I'm busy, but I'm accessible. So if somebody's serious about this, I like to carve out 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Let's jump on the phone. Let's have a conversation. And if it makes sense, great. If not, great. But that's it. Somebody's serious about it. Let's talk.
I love it, folks. I always say this, money has a language. And the good thing is I speak that language. And so does Private Money Club. So if money's your stumbling block, we speak the language, we'll help you. And the other thing is take action. I'll put the links up for Trent in the description. So go down there and just click that right now and schedule a call, but don't waste this time. Nobody wants to waste any time.
Thank you.
If you're serious, well, we talked about this offline. If you're serious, why would you not want to learn this? This could seriously be the biggest opportunity of your entire lifetime. And it's sitting right there on a silver plate waiting. Remember the watermelon? How much of that watermelon do you want? Here it is, folks. So stop complaining, stop belly aching, stop blaming, and start doing. Book the call right now if you're serious. PrivateMoneyClub.com can take care of the money part for you. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I was really fired up about this because this is the very first time out of hundreds of episodes on this podcast that someone has figured this piece out. Trent, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming on. And folks, thank you for your time. We'll see you on the next episode.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chris.